Coming up on Theater Talk.
I know you've all read the Book of Mormon.
Yes.
Cover to cover.
We haven't memorized.
I've tried a few times.
Yes.
It's boring, yeah.
Theater Talk is made possible in part by the CUNY TV Foundation. From New York City, this is Theater Talk. I'm the show's producer, Susan Haskins.
And I'm Michael Riedel of the New York Post.
Broadway's Book of Mormon is a fabulous, fun show, and we are so happy to have the creators here tonight.
The Book of Mormon really is shaping up to be the hit musical on Broadway this season. I identified that a long time ago because I know how to pick them. And we are joined this evening by the creators of the Book of Mormon. Let's start with our old friend Robert Lopez, who won a Tony Award for another show that I picked right off the bat would be a big winner, Avenue Q. Remember how I was a big champion of that early on, Bobby?
We got the footage to prove it, too.
That's right. And Bobby is working now with two newcomers to the Broadway musical. They are Trey Parker and Matt Stone, the creators of South Park. And you guys always come as kind of a matched set. I mean, do you do anything independent of each other?
No, we live together. We do absolutely everything together.
You create together, all your hobbies?
All of our shopping, we do all of our shopping together with the same list and everything.
Yep.
So.
That's right. All right, gentlemen, congratulations on the Book of Mormon, and welcome to Broadway, guys.
Thank you.
Bobby, what is it like to work with amateurs? What is it like to, I mean, you wrote one of the most successful musicals of all time, and now you're shackled with these guys who've never done it before.
Yeah, it's tough. It's really tough.
Are you the leader on this? Are you sort of teaching them as they go along?
No, they are my comedy heroes. Their South Park movie. I was always a fan of the show, and then I remember reading the Times review of the movie mentioning it had something like 10 or 12 songs in it. And I was like, 10 or 12 songs, that's a movie musical. I got to go see that. Mm-hmm. And I went and just, it blew my mind. I just thought it was not just the funniest musical ever, but one of the best musicals I'd ever seen. The idea for Avenue Q kind of came to us really shortly after that movie came out. It was bizarre. And through other weird coincidences, we had thanked them in our bio. Jeff and me had thanked.
And you'd never met?
No.
We'd never met. No. The night that they came to see the show, we happened to be there too because it was really early in the run. We were popping over a lot, and the house manager said, "Your friends over there. Go over there." And we went over there and took them out for a drink afterwards, and
decided to write a show. Now, I think Steve Sondheim said that the South Park movie was the best musical he'd seen in about 15 years. Is that something that got you guys thinking about doing a stage musical?
No, it's something I've always wanted to do. I mean, it was really, even from back, the first movie we ever made together was in college, and it was Cannibal the Musical. It was just like, I've just always been trying to force musical anything. I mean, as soon as we got the deal to do a movie for South Park, we were like, this is gonna be a musical, it's gonna be a musical, and so it's just something. I was actually a music major when we met, it's just something that I love, and so yeah, it wasn't. It was great. When I remember I got a letter actually from Stephen Sondheim. I just randomly got a letter from him saying that was one of my favorite musicals of the last 15 years. And then he actually sent me another one after Team America and said, that's my new favorite musical.
Now, it's my understanding, Matt, you don't even know who Stephen Sondheim is, right?
I do now.
You do.
I don't think I did a few years ago.
These guys are musical theater nuts.
Yeah,
and you
absolutely.
have no interest in the thing at all.
Well, not no interest, but I definitely came to it through knowing Trey. I mean, even though I didn't grow up knowing anything about musicals, I'm really not knowing anything about musicals except for Fiddler on the Roof.
Why?
Because my mom is Jewish, and I think she thought it would make me more Jewish to listen to that soundtrack over and over. So I really know Fiddler on the Roof, but I didn't really know that was a musical. It was just an album we had in our house. Mm-hmm. But then when I met Trey in college, and he was really into musicals, and also like we were both into Monty Python. Mm-hmm. So just comedy-wise, we kind of had this connection. And then, like Trey said, we did Cannibal the Musical, and then from then on, I kind of. Although I don't think it's ever going to be in my DNA like it is with Bobby and Trey. Mm-hmm. I've gotten a real reverence for the form. I mean, it's really, and actually having gone through this process of doing one, I I get it now, I think, a lot more, and I really appreciate musicals a lot more, but I came to it the weirdest way. Like, I started doing them first and then started liking them, which is kind of odd, but, you know.
Actually, though, maybe that works with a collaboration because you guys can be so immersed in the musicals you love, and your show very cleverly sends up and parodies a lot of songs from famous musicals. But having this guy here to sort of say, I have no idea what the joke is.
Yeah, and that way you know that it's working on different levels, and it's not just working because it's this weird reference to Sound of Music. It's working because it works in our show as well, you know. And
I bet there's musical references in our show I still don't know. I think most of them have been pointed out to me, but
The literacy about musical theater that's reflected in your show, the full knowledge, and yet you're not really thinking about it while you're watching it, except there's one point that I wondered why Disney wasn't suing you. but beyond that, but then walking away, we were saying, oh, but that was Rent. Oh, no, but that was The King and I. And only after do you reflect on the influence.
right.
Well, it was important to us because we really wanted to create an original piece of musical theater, and so we didn't want to just make a parody of a song and make a parody of this. You know, I think there's little references in songs, but we really tried to make the songs themselves really original.
The challenge, I think, for you with the Book of Mormon is that you have to sustain a show for 2 hours and 25 minutes.
Yeah.
And, you know, you guys are all brilliant at kind of 20-minute sketch comedy TV shows and fast jokes and all that kind of stuff. Was that something that it was always in your mind that you're going to have to make this more just a kind of a sketch comedy material?
You know, it's funny because when we were developing Avenue Q, we first thought of it as a TV show, and we wrote a bunch of parody songs. And then once we took the route of doing it on stage, we realized that we couldn't just rely on parody. It had to have an emotional through line and a punch and an arc and give something to the audience emotionally so that they could feel like it was a substantial meal. And when Matt and Trey came to see Avenue Q, like, that was one of the things that they said that they liked about it, that it had kind of that a couple of emotional moments in it that kind of surprised you and like, oh, I'm feeling for that puppet. And that's one of the things we did want to do with this, to give it a real story and to make you care about the Mormons and the.
I'm feeling for that puppet. I'm feeling for that Mormon. Can you tell us, though, for people who haven't seen the show, give us a sense, though, what the plot is and the emotional component of the Book of Mormon?
Because we actually started, the whole idea came from that first meeting after Avenue Q, and we were asking Bobby sort of what he was thinking about doing next, and he had mentioned he'd always thought about doing something about Joseph Smith. And we're like, oh, we love that stuff because we already, we'd already put Mormon stuff in stuff up for instance,
famously or infamously.
And so we were basically like, first it was just this idea, let's do Joseph Smith the musical, basically. Let's do that entire story as a musical. And then immediately as we started talking about it, we're like, well, do we really want to do a Pioneer Covered Wagons musical?
No.
Or, so yeah.
No, so what do we do now? Now we're in, yeah.
So we're like, well, how do people hear about this? And we realized that the way that most people hear about Mormonism, if they do, is through missionaries and through these elders that go around wearing the white shirts and the ties with the name tag and knock on your door. And so we started talking about those guys and sort of what they go through. And the more we got into that story and the fact that they spend some time at this training center and then they get paired with someone they don't really know and get shot somewhere out in the world as a real coming of age story, it just really seemed natural. Like, oh, this should be our story, two boys put together and how they're kind of going to deal with this first time away from their pristine, happy Salt Lake City, and that's when it really started to fall.
And it has a bit of a buddy movie feel to it, right? I mean, one guy is the very clean-cut guy, and the other guy is the kind of slobby. He could be out of the Spelling Bee musical, kind of a nerdy type guy.
Well, he's the archetypal Parker Stone, kind of big-boned anti-hero.
Big bone.
And part of the fun too was in treating that in so many traditional musicals. You've got the traditional love story. And because when you're a missionary, you get paired with someone and they are your companion for 2 years. And you don't really have a choice. And there's all these rules of what you and your companion can and cannot do. And you cannot, by rule, you can't go anywhere without your companion or do anything with it. And so we're just like, let's treat that like the typical Broadway relationship. And we'll have the breakup and we'll have the, are they going to get back together and all of that kind of stuff.
Sounds like your relationship. You can't go anywhere without.
Yeah, exactly.
That's kind of that. We know this relationship well. We actually been following the missionary rules of most of our life.
It's interesting, though, with the structure of the show, having these two guys, sort of opposites, going out in the world together, having a relationship, friendship falling apart, coming back together. It reminded me a bit of one of the things that made The Producers so successful, which is fundamentally a musical has to have a love story. It doesn't have to be a romantic thing, but Bialystok and Bloom, they're the lovers, if you will, in The Producers, and you have to have that solid relationship at the center of the show.
In the end, you're like with the Book of Mormon, you end up hopefully rooting for them to get back together.
Yeah.
You just know that, boy, life keeps getting in the way, but you know that at the end of the day, they make each other better.
Yeah.
And that this coming of age story can't happen without each other.
Yeah.
So hopefully by the end, you're rooting for them to come back together.
Yeah, and your musical goes some very dark places at some point that you really think that awful things will happen and you're not quite sure.
As does life.
Yeah, as does life. I mean, that's really the coming of age is they when they leave Salt Lake City, they're 19 and they think they know, especially the one character, he thinks he knows everything.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way I was when I was 19. And then you go and you get a big slice of reality. And in this case, they go to sub-Saharan Africa.
Uganda, I think, right?
Yeah, and that's a big, and then that is a kind of a dark, scary time of your life when you leave the nest.
Yeah.
And hopefully at the beginning of the show they're kind of more boys, and at the end they're a little more men. In the end, they actually know they don't know everything. That's what makes them kind of more grown up,
Very philosophical.
Now, let me ask you, the show has already been written about because of potential controversy, if you will, and you guys are famous for provoking people. And you, to some extent, with Avenue Q, too. We embraced it, we loved it, but it was a little subversive there. Do you intentionally set out to write a song that is going to make a majority of the audience go, oh my God, this is really offensive?
No, we're just offensive people because we
Just
never
off the
try
bat,
not
we
to
don't
be.
wait.
And in all the episodes of South Park, honestly, we never sit down and go, okay, how can we make people angry with it? It's just like it's not the
So your natural humor, the bent of your humor, has always been this kind of scatological and potty mouth.
Yeah, and we're also trying. We're always trying to have at least a little bit of a point. We're trying to tell a story and trying to do. Trying to make people laugh. We're trying to make things fun, but we're just kind of offensive people, and so it just kind of comes out that way.
And also you seem to, you will endure no bugaboos. I mean, you don't like pretentiousness, and you seem to be attacking that on every. Is that fair
I
to
guess,
say?
yeah. I never thought about it that way, but yeah, I mean, I think that, I don't know, like Trey said, we just set out, with this, it seemed like we got to tell this story first. And if, and for instance, like the Hasadiga, which I don't know how much we can say here on television, but
Well, we just say it's a number sort of like Hakuna Matata, where the missionaries meet the poor Africans in the village.
Right.
And they have their own
prayer,
unique way of talking to God, shall we say.
Right, but like that for that song, that's probably the moment when that they get to Africa and they realize this place is a lot different than Salt Lake City. But in the end, you need that number so that at the end of the musical, you can have people say, "Thank you, God."
Right.
In other words, there has to be this journey, and so a lot, we feel like the most proud of the stuff that we do that always is earned. So if we can earn our way there, then it's like then it's not uncomfortable, and it's not like, oh, why am I watching this? Because no one wants to go to a theater and just get bummed out.
No, it's not meaningless. You have
yeah,
a
there
great
has to be
sense
a
of
meaning
structure.
behind it.
And at the whole
We
end
like
of the
that.
thing, you've come to this wonderful thing. You're almost telling the story of how religions develop.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's educational,
Yeah.
almost like.
Yeah.
Do you ever make the mistake, though, where you yourselves think maybe we've gone too far? In other words, it's offensive without being funny, which would probably
Yeah, of
kill.
course.
Does that happen?
But that's
in
the thing in
Not
every
being
day.
funny,
Yeah, in
period.
every time you're coming up with something, and that's why it's like, oh man, that's pretty. And it's like, okay, how can we make this okay? What's the point of that? And are we just doing it to be, is it gratuitous? Is it, or does it have? Is there a reason for it to
Is
be
there a
there?
dramatic reason
Yeah,
for it?
and because then the last thing we wanted too was for the show to come off cynical, and just come off, and so. If it all is pointing towards optimism and pointing towards having fun and being happy, then it was okay. But we do the same thing in South Park all the time. It's like sometimes someone will come up with a thing and just be like, oh wow, like I don't know if we could do that, but it's like, well, you could if you did it this way. And like a lot of that is the writing.
After we saw your musical, my husband said to me, those Mormons were really likable. I mean, you're making fun. Of Mormon lore to a certain extent, I was thinking, but then there's a really likable group of
Mormons, for the most part, are really likable people, and that's part of why we wanted to make a musical about it, because that's the thing is none of us, and that's why we knew right away we would work well together, is because none of us had this feeling of, oh, let's go after Mormons. You know, they're messed up. Let's go after them. It was really like, aren't Mormons fascinating? And isn't this just, it's crazy what they believe, but really, we've never met a Mormon we don't like. You know, they're all just so nice and so, you know what I mean? And I'm sure there are plenty out there that we wouldn't.
None of you are women.
Yeah, but we haven't.
Don Lafferty?
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. We haven't met a lot of them.
Actually, though, I was thinking about this because I know you've all read the Book of Mormon.
Yes.
You know,
Cover to cover.
We haven't memorized.
I've tried a few times.
Yes,
It's
right,
boring,
right,
yeah.
But also the thing about Mormons too is they are theatrical people. They put on these pageants.
Yeah.
I mean, they have an innate sense of theater. In fact, in the little history that I read of them, they did these pageants in this theater as a way of entertaining themselves back in the covered wagon days.
Religion and theater are so intimately linked, and literature and religion are intimately linked. They're all forms of the same basic thing. And music has been in religion since the dawn of religion too. And when we work on Broadway, that is people call the theater a temple. It's the same basic thing. It's optimism. It's people collecting together in a room for some purpose.
The Mormon Church is so young. You know, I mean, Joseph Smith all went down in the mid 1800s. So really, the church really kind of came of age in the 20th century. So when you go to the Temple Square and you go to Palmyra, the aesthetic of their drawings of Jesus or of like the Jews coming on boats. Yeah, or they're like, they're 50s, 60s, 70s. They seem informed by Disney or informed by the same things that informed Disney and Rodgers and Hammerstein.
You know that Disney walked around Salt Lake City and saw that temple and thought, where did they get the idea for that?
That's genius. It's all connected too, because now we've been out here and we've met directors that are like, oh, I've got to go cast a tour of Les Miserables. I'm going to Salt Lake City. And, you know, it happens all the time, too, where they'll go to Salt Lake City to find music theater. It's a great place to find musical theater people.
Well, that's because I think the university there has a very good, Mormon University has a very good theater department.
Yeah.
Well, let's not all get too carried away, because you do point out that they don't seem very smart in their philosophical.
Yeah, but we point out that nobody's very smart.
Yeah, I think that's more of I don't think we
You all
point
have
out
a healthy malice and contempt for
Everything.
mankind.
Yes.
Fundamentally at the core of your talent.
I mean, we definitely want to have fun with some of the Mormon beliefs.
lore,
It's just, I mean, to an outsider, it's just silly. It is. But at the same time, like Trey said, there'd be something really like dishonest and shallow about doing that to someone's religion, and then also representing them as bad people. It's like you have a kind of obligation when you're doing that, when you're taking someone's religion, having that much fun with it, to kind of represent them honestly, which they're nice people.
Unless they're Scientologists, but
Right. Well, that's not a religion.
That's your next show.
That's different. Yeah.
It's interesting about the Mormons, though, because I was out in Salt Lake just a couple of weeks ago, and I was having dinner with some Mormons. They seemed normal to me. And I said, there's a new musical called The Book of Mormon. They'd all heard about it. They'd all read about it. They knew it might be offensive. And I said, well, would you go to see it? And one of them said to me, he said, I wouldn't go to see it if I were in New York, but if somebody invited me to go with them, I would go because I'm curious. I thought he was fishing for a free ticket. Yeah. And I said, you know what? When you're in town, I'll take you. But he had no objection to going. He said,
it's like being bisexual.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever's going on.
I'm not going to start, but if someone invites me.
Somebody invites me along, depending on how much I've had to drink. Well, they don't drink, depending on how much cranberry juice I've had. But I thought that, because their philosophy, though, is the same laws that allow them to worship the way they want to worship allow all of you to make fun of them.
And they pointed that out.
The Mormon Church's official response to the stuff we've done in the past or this show is just, to me, perfect and just such a big-hearted American, like First Amendment loving reaction to it. It just makes me love them more.
I'm glad you pointed out that not until 1978 were blacks considered human.
Yeah.
The religion's it's evolving.
They have slightly discriminatory views in many areas.
Well, they have, but isn't it better than if they hadn't done that in 1978 and changed their mind about black people?
It is indeed, but when you say they're so damn nice, and that you go, well, it's so damn nice, but how can you treat some of your women that way?
Well, listen, I'm going to take some Mormons. I'm taking some Mormons when they come to see the show.
Where do you put these Mormons?
I have a wide circle of friends.
I really think a lot of Mormons have already seen it, and we can tell the Mormons that are in the crowd.
Yeah. You can hear the laughs.
Because there are jokes in there that are you have to be Mormon to know what we're talking about.
What did they think about the gay stuff?
Well, I don't know. I have talked to a couple of Mormons who came and saw one of the first previews, and they really liked the show. We didn't talk about that storyline in particular, but
friend of mine who's a Mormon writer said that "Turn It Off," the song about the gay Mormon, is the most accurate depiction of the inside of her mind that she'd ever seen.
That's interesting. Well, do you think these Mormons come because they're spies, sort of checking it out, and reporting back to the
because it's always been
Mother
a thing. You know, we did a movie back when we were right after college called Orgasmo that was about a Mormon as well. And it was nuts because even after South Park became huge, way after that, we would go to Salt Lake City and people would be, oh my God, it's Orgasmo, oh my God, it's Orgasmo. You know, there's so many people that take pride on, that it's crazy. And even the South Park episode we did about Mormons, there's people who consider themselves Mormons who love watching this. It's really funny to them. Yeah. You know, and it's the same thing where so many people that watch South Park are Catholic. Our executive producer, Ann, is Catholic. But you know, and then when people are like, "Oh, you did that really pissed off the Catholics," it's like, no, it pissed off this one guy who's writing all this stuff saying us Catholics are pissed off.
Right. But I also think there's a stereotype that Mormons don't have a sense of humor too, and I don't think that's true. I think they really have a bit. I mean, we can tell. I think a lot of Mormons, now very very devout Mormons, probably won't come to the show, and, and they probably won't like it. But I think that would be true for any religion. But I think they're going to like the show.
But you were so drawn to them that you did Orgasmo and you came back.
Well, it's fascinating. And we grew up in Colorado. We grew up around a lot of Mormons. And so from a very young age, we were hearing these stories and just being like, what? You know, but it's also, you know, the whole thing to me, not even just the story, the actual Book of Mormon, and not even, just the whole story of those pioneers and going to Salt Lake City and walking around Temple Square, that whole story is fascinating.
It's moving to see how moved they are by the story of the people that got to SaltAke City. You just can't help but be like, okay, well, you guys are really stoked on this, you know, and the fact that it's relatively young, and instead of talking about Christianity and trying to look through the cloud of history back 1,000 years, you're only looking like 150 years. Yeah. So some of the ridiculousness is just more ridiculous because it hasn't had all those rewrites through history. That's right. And it's just a great way to talk about religion. Yeah.
There's two ways to look at Joseph Smith. One is that an angel came to him and gave him these golden plates, and he translated them into this book and led followers, you know, and they were all God's, you know, chosen tribe. Or he's this amazing storyteller that wrote this Bible fan fiction that got people in his village to join him and uproot their families and cross the country and die for him. That's kind of more amazing.
Yeah,
well, he's also a wonderful theatrical character because he had this enormous charisma. He was a real star. We just have a few minutes left, but I want to ask you about what you're learning about writing a musical, and if you're picking up anything from the old veteran here. Any particular something that challenges you writing the show that you didn't expect at all? What's the most difficult thing
for me, the biggest, I think for us, you know, because we come from such a movie and TV world where it's like, okay, you have your idea, do your thing, now press it, you're done, move on to the next thing, you know, and I remember it was like pretty early on when we were doing like the first workshop, which we didn't even know what a workshop was and how that works. So we were doing that first thing, and Bobby said this thing about, well, no, a show like this, it's a living thing. And as we've gone on, I've really learned what that meant. This is like this living baby that's always there, you know, and it's different every night, and the audience is different every night, and that makes the show different every night. And you know, it's like it really is this living thing, which is what's really cool about it and very challenging about it.
Yeah, I mean, we're in previews right now, which, I mean, when we heard what the process was of tech and then previews, we're like, okay, wait, you play it for a month and you can change, and then you open. Why do you have to do that? And
Spider-Man doesn't, so why?
Forever. Just be in previews forever. But now after being there for a couple of weeks, you really get it, because the audience is I won't say one of the cast members, but it's an element. Whereas with the stuff we do, we just sit in an editing suite and do it for ourselves, but you cannot finish it until you have an audience. It can't be friends and family. It has to be a real audience.
And the audience is the fourth collaborator. Right. Yeah. You don't know what you have until 200 people who paid for their ticket are responding. Yeah.
And I even think 2 weeks ago I didn't understand that, and now I do. Just even in the last week or two, I've really
The night I saw it, the audience jumped to their feet. Have they ever not jumped to their feet and been ecstatic?
No,
they just went berserk.
Yeah. No, on this show. On this show, no. We've had the experience of that not happening. Not on this show yet. No, we know what that's like.
Now, Bobby knows his way around the kind of treacherous world of Broadway. What do you guys make of Broadway? Not just working on the show, but the atmosphere of it. Your producer Scott Rudin and the press agents and the critics and the columnists.
I think it's great.
Because you're all new to it, right?
Yeah. I think it's great. I think
There's some
people
parts of it-
warned us about it a lot before, and we were like, oh no.
What did they?
like-
What
Well,
would
what
they
was
say?
funny
Oh,
was they
it's
kept saying,
not-
they're like, oh, hold on, you're gonna get to tech, and then you're not gonna believe how slow and boring it is. And we got to tech, and it's like, oh, we're sitting here waiting on lighting. It's like, this is just like making a movie. That's actually where we felt the most at home. We're like, okay, this is like wait.
Slow and boring.
Yeah.
And people warn you about other things.
Oh, they're gonna, like people are gonna be snobby or like I don't know, like elitist and like they're not gonna accept you. The theater community. People warned us of this. I don't know. I haven't had that.
No, it's
People are
been
really
great. The
nice. I
community's
really like
awesome.
it.
Yeah.
And going through the process of like workshopping and with a group of actors and having them live with the characters and then going through the process of opening the show with that group of people is really fun. You become really close to them.
So you think you'll do another one after this?
Not a lot of work.
Bobby
right away.
Lopez might be the man who breaks up the Trey Parker match.
No.
Would you ever
We
make
need a vacation for a little bit.
Well, the show's called The Book of Mormon at the Eugene O'Neill Theater.
Yep.
It's going to be the big hit of the season, I predict, and I was right about Avenue Q. Right, Bobby? Bobby Lopez, Trey Parker, Matt Stone, the creators of Book of Mormon, thanks for being our guest tonight on Theater Talk.
Thank you guys.
Well, thanks.
Our thanks to the Friends of Theater Talk for their significant contribution to this production. Theater Talk is made possible in part by the Frederick Lowe Foundation, the Eleanor Naylor Dana Charitable Trust, the Alan S. Gordon Foundation, the Corey and Bob Donnelly Charitable Fund, Carrie J. Fries, the Dorothy Strelson Foundation, the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, and the New York State Council on the Arts, a state agency.
We welcome your questions or comments for Theater Talk. Thank you and good night.